Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Gretchen Rubin. She is a best-selling author of too many books to mention, but I'll just start with The Happiness Project, Outer Order, Inner Calm, The Four Tendencies, and this new one, Life in 5 Senses. She is also a podcaster, an app creator, so many things.
So many things.
So many things. So I have to stop so that we can get to this new book, Life in 5 Senses. I love this book, Gretchen. It's amazing and fascinating and made me look and listen to everything in a different way. I want to start by asking you about the impetus for this, because you had kind of an aha moment that started you down this path of exploration.
Yes, and it started on a very ordinary moment. I'm a person who's maybe overly susceptible to pink eye, and I had an unusually stubborn case, so I ended up going to the eye doctor, and as we were finishing up, he said to me, well, be sure to come back for your regular checkup, because as you know, you're at more risk for losing your vision. And I was like, and he said it very casually, like, wear your sunscreen. And I said, no, what are you talking about? I did not know that I was at greater risk for losing my vision. And he said, yeah, you're extremely nearsighted, and that means you are at more risk of having a detached retina. And if that happens, we want to catch it right away because it can affect your vision. And by chance, I had a friend who had recently lost some of his vision to a detached retina. So that felt like very real to me. And as I walked out onto the street, I looked around me and I thought, oh, it just hit me. Because of course, intellectually, I knew I could lose anything at any time, we all can. And I knew that I could have a rich, meaningful life, even if I did lose one or more of my senses. But it just hit me that I was taking it all for granted. I was looking around like I'd never seen it before, and I had not noticed anything on my way over. I live in New York City, so I'd walked there, and I was getting ready to walk back. And as I was realizing that I was taking everything for granted, it was like every knob in my brain just got jammed up to 11, and I could see everything with crystal clarity. I could hear every sound on a separate track. I could smell every smell, which, you know, New York City is pretty smelly. And it just came to me in this kind of psychedelic intensity all the way home. And that showed me, you know, this is happening all around me all the time. I'm not noticing it. I'm stuck in my head. I'm in this fog of preoccupation. And I've been studying happiness for years, and I had the sense that there was something I was missing. There was some piece, some essential element that I had been overlooking. And that walk showed me it was my 5 senses. That was what was missing. That was the way that I could get that direct contact with the world, with other people, with myself, that I had felt that I'd been missing. So it really came from pink eye.
I've had 2 kids, and I feel like I had pink eye for 20 years.
Yeah, I know. Yes, right.
Yeah.
Right. And it comes and it goes, but usually it does not come with an epiphany. So I feel like, you know, there was an upside that time.
And you know, when you talk about that element, you are a happiness expert. There's a part in the book pretty early on where you say why the study of happiness is important, and why happiness and the pursuit of it is important. And I want you to speak a little bit to that, like what it is about happiness that is meaningful.
Well, happiness is happiness, you know, and I think that sometimes people feel like in a world so full of injustice and suffering, is it morally appropriate for me even to seek to be happier? But in fact, research shows that happier people are more interested in the problems of the world, and they're more interested in the problems of other people. They're more likely to donate their time, they're more likely to donate their money, they're more likely to vote, they have healthier habits, they make better leaders and better team members. There's sort of a feeling sometimes that that people who are happy just want to sit by the beach and drink margaritas all day. But in fact, it seems like people who are happy start having thoughts like, I think there might be a better way to distribute malaria nets, you know, maybe I need to get involved in that. So really, by thinking about our own happiness, well, we're happier, and also it really equips us to think more about the happiness of other people as well.
Right, because happiness has a lot to do with purpose, and it has to do with awareness, which is where the senses come in.
Absolutely.
And
both.
you start this pursuit of understanding the senses with a really interesting project for yourself. It's a very New York City specific one.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Tell me about that, and then tell me about how somebody who doesn't live on the Upper West Side might be able to.
Well, I live on the Upper East Side.
Okay.
So,
okay. Okay. You know, but who lives uptown?
Yeah, lives uptown. Well, I was very interested in repetition. I've always been very drawn to repetition and familiarity, and how experiences change with familiarity and over time. So as part of this experience, I wanted to do something every day. I'm also kind of an all or nothing person where like I like the idea of doing something every day more than doing it sometimes or most days. So I wanted to do something every day. I wanted to go to the same place every day. And I live within walking distance of the Metropolitan Museum, which it's like, I'm so incredibly fortunate that I have the time and the freedom to visit. And living in New York City, we can visit for free as New York State residents. I did join as a member because I was visiting every day. But I decided I want to go every day and see how it changes. And when I started this, I thought that was pretty idiosyncratic. But what I found is that many people do this, or many people have the impulse to do this. Like people who do forest bathing will have a sit spot. Often they go back to the same place every day, or they'll do the same walk with their dog. There's something about seeing something like change so gradually. I know I heard from a guy who goes to the same drugstore every day. And I thought, I get that because like a big drugstore, there's a lot going on in a big drugstore. There's a lot to see and to smell and to taste and to touch and people there. So I don't think it's something, I feel incredibly fortunate that I could go someplace like the Met, but I've heard from so many people who have done it in their own way. And I think it's the kind of thing that some people kind of would never dream of doing it. They're like, I like more variety, or I don't want to feel stuck. But then other people are very deeply attracted to the idea of doing something every day. There's a power that comes from that.
And it can be a drugstore. It can be your walk.
Yeah, your daily walk with your dog. And and you're like, you watch the same tree throughout the year and throughout the seasons, or you watch the plants change in your neighbor's garden or whatever. Yeah.
And you talk in the book, and I really love this as someone who struggles with meditation.
Oh yeah. Good. All right, you and me both.
That this is not meditation.
Yes.
What's the difference, or what's the difference between this and the kind of mindfulness practice that we've heard a lot about? We're like, I have to eat this raisin, and I get it. Like I get the raisin tastes like this. I'm eating this single raisin for 15 minutes, and I just want to kill myself. Yeah. So what's the difference?
Yeah, so a lot of people want to say like, oh, I think this is a meditation. This is walking meditation, and certainly I think people could do it in a way that would be meditation. But I wanted the opposite of meditation. So meditation, if it is anything, I think at its core, because there's many kinds of meditation, it is an effort to discipline the mind. You're doing a certain thing with your mind. Where I felt like I was too rigid with my mind. I was too focused, too controlled. I wanted recess. I wanted to let my mind off the leash. And so I wanted something where I would just do whatever I felt like, for as long as I felt like, and I would just think whatever I felt like. And if I felt like thinking about this, I would. I remember somebody saying to me like, well, if you're going to do this, you need to sit in front of like an artwork and study it for half an hour. And I'm like, I don't have to do that. And she's like, oh, yes, you do. And I'm like, no, I don't, because that does not appeal to me. I think for some people that would be very appealing. And I've been going every day for such a long time. Maybe one day I would think that would be a fun exercise to do. But this is really much more playful, much more undisciplined, much more just like doing what you feel like. Because I think for some people, they need to bring that element into their life. And so, and maybe other people might not feel that need, but for me, I felt like I needed to schedule time to goof off. I needed to find a way to put that on my calendar to like give myself recess.
And you say in the book that there's value in play.
Yeah, 100%, yes.
And I think unless, a lot of the books and the conversation around like mindfulness and meditation is it's so I can be more productive later. And this is not about that. This is about its own thing.
It's about its own thing. And there is a huge amount of research showing that time off or downtime, like this open time, is a time of creativity. You tend to like make unexpected associations. And like Virginia Woolf said that my mind works in idleness. And so I think it's all about sort of understanding ourselves and what we need to sort of bring ourselves into balance, because I think some people are very drawn to meditation, but no tool fits every hand, and you and I don't find it to be a useful tool. So it's sort of like, okay, well then what would I bring in to have mindfulness? And in a way, this is a kind of mindfulness. It's a kind of attentiveness, but maybe a kind of more playful, loose kind of mindfulness or attentiveness. These are very broad terms that people use in different ways.
Well, I think kind of says a lot there, right? Like it's good, right? It's a kind of, which is good.
It's a form, yes,
so
right.
Let's get into the senses. Let's get into like the big five.
Yes.
You start with the visual, and you say early on, I thought the way that you phrased it was so fascinating that, all of our senses are important, but in a competition, if they're all competing for our attention, that our visual senses will win.
Will usually
trump.
Yeah.
Talk about why is that, and then what did you learn from the visually impaired people that you talked to for the book?
Well, we're wired that way. Sight has more real estate in the brain, and that's just the way we're brought into the world. Talking to people who are visually impaired, what you see is that there are many ways that the other senses can be recruited, and sometimes that's through technology, because now technology is bringing in all these new tools, or even just the tools that we bring into the world with us, like touch. You can use these to fill in whatever gaps that you need to fill in.
Yeah. And I really loved in the book, you make a connection between hearing and touching, listening and touching, like even when you just touched me before, right? Or like having a conversation.
Yeah.
Those are connections that I don't think we always recognize. How do those two senses work in harmony together?
Well, you're talking about the ones that help us to engage, because one of the most important things we do with our hearing is listening to other people, and one of the most important ways that we engage with other people is through appropriate touch. And what I found is that if I was having a difficult conversation, say with my husband, that if I would reach out and touch him while we were doing it, it would immediately change the nature of the conversation. It would make it more tender, it would make it more attentive. It's just much harder to stay super irritable with somebody if you're actually physically touching them. And so those are ways that you can use those two together to help you connect with other people.
They're both about listening and connecting.
Yes.
You also talk about, this is like one of my favorite things, is the connection between smell and taste. I love the way they work together or don't work together. A lot of us, myself included, went through COVID.
Did you lose your sense of smell?
For a long time. And it made me feel like less of a person. It made me really sad, Gretchen. I was so sad because I couldn't smell it was like nothing gave me pleasure. Talk to me about the way that those two work in harmony or work together, and what happens when we don't have access to.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting because sort of traditionally, especially in the West, the sense of smell has been kind of treated as like a bonus sense or kind of like a nice to have sense, and it hasn't been particularly emphasized or understood as important. But I think post-COVID, because so many people went through that experience, either they experienced it themselves or they know somebody who lost their sense of smell, that we're much more aware of its importance to like a sense of vitality and connection. I think that now versus 5 years ago, there's a much greater understanding of how it affects the sense of taste, because you're exactly right. Without our sense of smell, with taste, we just smell the big five of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. So if you put a jelly bean in your mouth with your nose plugged, it would just taste very sweet. But if you unplug your nose, then you get all those complex flavors that might be like cherry or root beer, those bonkers flavors that they have, pina colada. But for that, you need your sense of smell. And so, of course, with COVID, when people lost their sense of smell, it also affected their sense of taste. A lot of times people, that's what they notice first. Which did you notice first? Sense of smell?
It kicked in like a day later, and it was the smell.
You noticed the smell right away.
Yeah, and I was so sad, Gretchen. It made me sad.
Yeah, no, people say you feel claustrophobic, you feel like you're behind glass. Everything feels stale, and then the food loses its pleasure. It's interesting, some people lose weight because they get no pleasure from food, and then some people gain weight because they can't get satisfied.
Yeah, I lost, I had people saying, are you okay? For a long time.
How long did you lose it for?
For like a month.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It was bad. It was really intense. And this speaks to the ways in which our senses are connected with our emotions.
Yes.
And smell is so deeply connected with emotion and with memory in a way that almost no other sense is.
Well, okay, so this is the argument, because there is that argument, and there's a lot of arguments about why that's true. But in my own experience, I feel like all the senses are really important for memory. I'm like, if I hear a song that was like my favorite song in high school, that takes me back. If I saw my favorite shirt from when I was 3 years old, that would take me back. I don't know. People do often say that smell has a special role, and I wonder if that's because with smell, we're surprised. It's invisible. It comes on us unawares, and we're just flooded with memory. Because there's a lot of arguments about kind of like why the physiology of smell is particularly strong, but I feel like they're all strong for memory.
I love them all.
I feel like they all kick up memory. And I'm a huge fan of the sense of smell. Like I went into this really appreciating the sense of smell, but so anyway, that's just one of these things where I haven't done any research on this, and many people say there is this special role for the sense of smell, but I feel like they're also powerful in evoking memory.
You put me next to like a fuzzy blanket or a fuzzy coat, and I will just be like right back in my kindergarten coat room.
See, there
like
you go.
That's pure, like that's a touch memory.
Exactly.
Big time.
Exactly. Or I think about my grandfather was an engineer in the Union Pacific Railroad, so we had this lava soap, which is this special gritty soap
You talk about that, yeah.
And I'm like the feeling of that, I mean, flooded. Even just seeing the package in the grocery store, I just happened to see it one day. And so I think, would it be stronger if I smelled it? I don't know, or for me it was the touch of it. So I think they're all so powerful.
I love them all.
I love them all.
But here's the problem, but we almost have too many coming at us at once now, right? Like we live in New York City, but wherever we live, we are just flooded with sounds, smells, as you mentioned, visuals. Like it's a barrage all the time. And you talk about that, like that sound, that notification sound, the ripple sound that just like makes you seize up, right? Absolutely, it just makes you stiffen.
Yes.
How do we filter those so that we're getting the good sensory experiences, the ones that bring us that happiness, bring us that joy, and somehow put a little bit of a muffle down a little bit the ones that give us stress and anxiety, because our prefrontal cortexes are so overloaded. How do we filter?
Well, I think a lot of it is really addressing our sensory environment and trying to take control of it where we can, because there's some things that are not within our control that you can't stop sirens from going down your street. But to a very great degree, we tend not to fuss with our sensory environments to the degree to which many of us can, to make it suit ourselves. And so say with your phone, if you're a person who really cannot put down your phone, if you feel like it's really grabbing your attention in a way that's like crowding out other things, turn your phone to grayscale. Because if it's black, white, and gray, you will find it much more difficult to use your phone. It's just harder to use, and it's a lot less appealing. If you feel distracted by notification sounds, turn off your notification sounds, or turn off your haptic notifications if you find that very distracting. For focus and productivity, create the the auditory environment that works for you. So let me ask you, if you need to really focus, really like concentrate, do you prefer silence, a busy hum, like in a coffee shop, music with words, or music without words?
I like white noise. I put on my rain sounds.
Okay, white noise. Okay.
Or brown noise.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like pink noise. Yeah. They're all like there's little differences in there.
So what's pink noise? What is pink
noise? It's just like which the frequencies are. It's a little bit. It just has a different sound. A little bit of a different sound.
Well, I like the sound of it. It sounds really pretty.
Yeah. No, yeah. And then there's well, so you like white noise, but so this is a thing that's very useful, because I think often people don't sort of think through, well, what really helps me do my best work, and then therefore can I put myself in a circumstance where I have that. It's kind of like, oh, I have to deal with whatever's here. And sometimes, again, it's not within our control, but often it is. And we can take steps to try to bring our environment into more alignment with what works for us. And people are very, some people are extremely sensitive to different kinds of touches. For some, it's smell. They can't bear to have any smells. And I also think this is why we really want to show more consideration for other people, because to a really astonishing degree, we just live in completely different sensory universes. This was just, I was I knew this intellectually, but realizing like I really do not hear a siren, because I hear sirens so often my brain doesn't even bother to alert me. Or we can't smell our home the way a guest would smell it, because it's so familiar to us, our brain doesn't alert us to the smell of air freshener or cats or dog food or whatever it might be. So guests will smell something that we will not smell. And so if people are, if they're struggling with some kind of thing in an environment where you're like, it's no big deal, I don't understand what you're fussing about. It's like, it can be very different for them, because they are truly we're all in our own sensory universe.
Absolutely. Like other people's chewing makes me crazy.
There you go.
Makes me crazy.
Yes, and other people don't even notice it. That's the thing. For you, it's immensely distracting. And for other people, it's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
And well, that's why
Yes.
you say in the
Yes.
book, this is about my five senses.
Yes.
This is about my Gretchen's five senses, which are
Yes.
going to be different. You know, when you talk
100%.
about things that are like,
Absolutely.
sounds that are pretty, one of the things I have to end with, because it was probably my favorite part of the book, this part about a little bit of ugly.
Oh.
I love that concept
Yeah.
so much. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Talk to me about why we need a little bit of ugly.
Well, it's just very interesting that, and it was sort of pulled together all these like weird little facts, which is that often a little bit of ugly is what we need to make something truly beautiful. So if you're creating a beautiful perfume, they often have notes that are very bad smelling in it, but overall it gives the perfume or the fragrance kind of a rich depth. With colors, there was this hilarious attempt by Australia to come up with the ugliest color, which is sort of, you know, what does that even mean? I think it's a very paradoxical ambition. But anyway, they wanted to do it to make cigarette packaging as unattractive as possible. So they came up with sort of greenish, brownish, which allegedly is the ugliest color. But of course, if you know, I go to the Met or you go anywhere and look around, you see it all over the place as part of beauty, because it's every color can be beautiful in the right context. In music, dissonance, at least to Western ears, it sounds dissonant, but it's often used in a way that's extremely effective. And some of the most renowned songs and music will use dissonance in an artful way. And with taste, like a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of bitterness will add. And so you need a little bit of ugly sometimes if you're going to create beauty.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's it's a good way to look at life in our five senses.
Well, and I have to say, like now, being more aware of my senses, I notice more beauty, but I also notice more racket and stink. But I like that. I'm not sorry that I'm more aware of the negative, because I do feel like it adds depth and richness to my life, to the universe.
So when you're going out about your life, just when you get that little bit of stink coming at you,
Yes.
just say thank you.
Yes,
Thank you to the stink.
Yes, yes.
You're giving me
the depth. Yes,
that
exactly.
resonant stink in life. Gretchen Rubin, thank you so much for
Thank
talking to me. The book,
you.
again, Life in Five Senses. What an absolute pleasure, Gretchen.
Well, thank you. I so enjoyed getting the chance to talk to you.
Thank you.